Okay, it's gone 11 o'clock, so we'll get started. And as Mark has said, the session is recorded. So if somebody is joining us late, don't worry. It will be available on our YouTube channel in a few days. Okay, so thanks for joining us again. Back to our normal format today, and I'm glad to say we've got Veeam with us, who'll be presenting on the latest versions of their products. And to start off with, I'm going to kick off with a quick session on Azure. So let's get started. So what is Azure? Well, it's a worldwide network of Microsoft data centers. There are over 200 data centers in 60 regions across the world. 2 of those are in the UK, in UK South and UK West. These data centers hold a host of different services that you can consume on an as-needed basis. The advantage of Azure is that Microsoft makes the upfront commitment in all the hardware. And depending on the service you choose, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, Microsoft will even take a lot of the infrastructure management costs off your hand as well. Before I move on from here, one common confusion with Azure is with Azure AD. Now, you all have Azure AD as part of your EES agreement, probably a P1 license or a P2 license. They are per user licenses, and as such, you buy them as per user licenses. Now, Azure itself is a pay-as-you-go collection of services that you can use on an as-needed basis. Where Azure AD and Azure fit in together, well, Azure AD provides the directory services for things like users in your Office 365 and for users in Azure. But what you do is you get an Azure subscription, and the subscription becomes connected to your tenancy. So that's the link between the two. They're separate products. One other point to maybe make clear is you can have multiple subscriptions connected to the same Azure AD. So you can have a separate Azure subscription, say for dev and test, that you want to keep separate. So you can have multiple subscriptions connected to Azure. Okay, so what services do you get in Azure? That's not really easy to cover in a short amount of time. But one of the best places for you to go and see what's going on is in the Azure calculator. And if you look at a screenshot of the calculator here, you can see there's over 20 different categories of services, and each has got multiple services within them. If we look at the top one, which is basically the featured tab, this contains some of the most used services within there. So virtual machines, where you can move your infrastructure from on-premise into the cloud and create your VMs in Azure. Then you can have storage accounts, an Azure SQL database, create your own Azure web apps. All of this is available in Azure. And then as you move down the tabs, you get access to more and more services. One that's drawing quite a bit of attention with our customers is the security services within Azure. A couple of these I'd like to point out. Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Now, Microsoft Defender for Cloud is a multi-environment antivirus solution for your services in Azure, like VMs, containers, your storage. But on top of that, because it's multi-cloud, it will also protect your AWS and other provider cloud services as well. But the reason this is particularly of interest is that it also protects on-premises VMs and servers. And what the reason it's of interest is that Microsoft Defender for Servers has been replaced by Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Okay. Replacing Microsoft Defender for Servers does mean that it does integrate into your Defender for Endpoint solution. Okay, another solution in here that people are interested in is Azure Sentinel. So this is a cloud-native security information and event management solution, or SIEM. Basically, this brings together data from all sorts of sources, like the event viewer on your servers, from routers, from firewalls, bringing all that information into one source where you can do analytics on your data and create workflows. And this helps you to accelerate threat detection and to respond, giving you better security. So that's Azure Sentinel. It's, again, within your services. So how much does it cost? This is a question we get asked all the time. Unfortunately, it isn't a simple answer because it's a pay-as-you-go service. So anything you turn on, anything you upgrade, anything you turn off affects the cost. So with Azure, what happens is your reseller, Pugh, will provide you with a subscription. Within this subscription, you get access to all the services within Azure. Then you will get invoiced on a monthly basis in arrears for what you have used in Azure. Okay, so having said that, it's difficult to say how much it's going to cost. The Azure Calculator is a fabulous tool to allow you to estimate what it's going to cost you. So if we go to a tab, find a service we want, like virtual machines, you then scroll down and then it brings up an estimation tool for you. And we've got a screenshot of the virtual machines here. You need to do a couple of things. Firstly is choose what data center you want. And you want to have it locally because of network speeds, but also because of things like GDPR and where your data is stored. Then the next thing you need to do with a VM is to decide how much oomph it's got. So in this instance, we've selected a D2S server, which has got 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. So you choose that server. And that gives you a cost in the bottom right-hand corner for how much this is going to cost you for every month. Okay, but that's not the end of it. There's a couple of things you need to be particularly aware of. So firstly, if you look at Azure Hybrid Benefit towards the bottom of the screen, select that option because as EES customers, you can use your on-premise Windows Servers licenses in Azure. So giving you savings because you're paying academic pricing rather than commercial pricing. So that will bring the price in the corner down. The other thing then is if you come across a little bit from Azure Hybrid Benefit, there's a thing called reserved instances. So if you're using a server full time and you can commit to it for 3 years, there is considerable savings on the amount of money you have to pay for that service. And in this instance, you can see that if you commit to 3 years, you will get a 62% saving on that cost. Okay, so the Azure calculator is a fantastic tool to find out how much everything costs. And clicking on any of the tabs or the services in the top of that will give you a different estimation tool to show you how much it's going to cost and have links then into more information on those services. So finally, I'm going to talk about some Azure best practices. In reality, these are the same as for any cloud service. Namely, never use your day-to-day account for management. You know, use a admin account when you want to access sensitive areas. Use multi-factor authentication, you know, a no-brainer really. And if you have Azure AD P2, or if you have an A5 license, consider using privileged identity management. And this can reduce the admin footprint you have within the portal. And then you give just-in-time access for technicians to do any work they need to do. So again, reducing the attack surface for your network. Now, Azure, it's particularly important that you tie down the number of people who have access to the portal. And one of the tools you have to do this is Azure policies. So create policies that limit what people can do within Azure so that they don't turn on services accidentally. On top of that, try and always monitor the costs or how much you are using within Azure. If you go to the cost management blade, it gives you a raft of information on how much you're spending and what you're spending it on. And if, as in this case, you find that your usage is fairly steady, what you need to do is you can set budgets up in here at, say, like 60% or 80% spend that will warn you when you're getting close to your limit. It doesn't stop it, but at least you get an email to say, look, your spend is getting close for the monthly limit. There is automation in cost management you can do as well to turn things off if you want to. Another thing to consider and keep an eye on with his emails, if you get it early in the month, you know, you spent quite a lot of your money at the start of the month, it's worth keeping an eye on that just in case something is going awry in your portal. Okay, that's it for me. And now I'm going to pass you on to Veeam, who are going to be talking about their backup solution and the latest version. And Azure, like every other service, does need to be backed up. So I'll pass you over to Veeam.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Mircea and I'm an Inside Systems Engineer for Veeam. And today we're going to look at what's new in Veeam Backup for Azure V5, Veeam Backup for and Replication V12, and Veeam Backup for Microsoft V7. So first off, we introduced immutability support. Veeam Backup for Azure can now store these Azure VMs backups and Azure SQL backups in immutable storage for Azure Blob. And by employing worm state, so this write once, read many repositories, we can ensure integrity of backup data in defending ourselves against cyber threats that want to attack and encrypt our critical backup data. Also, we introduced enterprise scalability. So the newest release brings improvements to our product scalability, which can help with large-scale environments through a single appliance. And this simplifies the overall backup management process and enhances the performance of configured policies, including internal appliance tasks, while also reducing the number of API calls, so also reducing the bill at the end of the month. We also introduced more control over sending your data to a backup repository, and this should greatly enhance data performance and allow you to avoid unneeded throttling from the public cloud when you need to run multiple backup policies that are targeted towards the same storage account. Since Microsoft and most of the mail providers made a switch from legacy authentication methods to modern, of course, we also accommodated. So the newest release allows the appliance to use the modern authentication mechanisms for mail servers, which should improve the security aspect of the configured infrastructure. And also, the newest version allows us to have a better and more granular monitoring and reporting. Because right now we also split the sessions between backups and archive tasks. So we'll have an in-depth look into our environment and we can monitor it on a different basis. And when it comes to license portability, we can now install our Veeam Universal License into Veeam Backup for Azure, which allows for a single portable type of licensing that spans across all workloads. And this includes cloud, virtual, and physical workloads, both on-prem and across public clouds. This capability should also should make the multi-cloud strategy process even more streamlined and easier to manage. Now, looking at what's new in Veeam Backup and Replication V12. So I managed to do a cut down list of features because in all, I think we had around 600. First off, by default, the configuration database will be on Postgres. This means that we don't have to worry about any licensing, for example, when it came to upgrading the SQL to standard edition, for example. We can also use our Veeam Mover capability from now on, which allows us to migrate the data, as you can see, copy or move the data from a repository to the other. And you'll benefit of native repository deduplication capabilities from the get-go. Until now, we had to basically start a new backup chain to have these benefits. And as you can see, as another core architectural improvement, we also have IPv6 support across all of our products. When it comes to security and compliance, we'll have MFA for the console. This is supported with any one-time password provider. And also, of course, since our Veeam Backup Replication console doesn't require public internet access, it will work just the same. So even if your VBR is off public internet, you can still use your one-time providers, be them Okta, Keycloak, Duo, so whatever you might use. Auto log off, so you can set up your idle session. Maybe you want to be logged off after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes of inactivity. You can set it up. Until now, it was hard coded into the product. And for even more granular access to machines running on Windows, like for databases or Oracle DBs, Microsoft SQL, and so on, we also support these group managed service accounts, which have to have specific policies under the domain controller. We can offload the data directly to object storage, so we no longer have to stage the data to a local array of disks. And another benefit of this direct to object storage is that, of course, we can have different policies in our infrastructure. Maybe if you just want to archive some data, like keep it in the public cloud for 3 years, and for other VMs where you're expecting maybe to restore the data more often, it might make sense to also keep a copy on-prem. You can also do that. So we can have different policies, of course, based on our workload criticality. For our NAS backups, so they'll also support immutable backups. From the get-go, until now, we had to do a workaround. And for NAS, we can also offload the data straight to object storage. For our continuous data protection, so our continuous replication for VMware machines, we can also deploy Linux proxies. Another benefit, of course, is this tendency of Veeam moving towards more and more Linux components is that you don't have to worry about Windows licensing. But also, since let's assume most of your infrastructure is on Windows, by just having the backup components on Linux, we'll at least have a failsafe in case we are attacked by something that targets only the Windows infrastructure. Since Veeam Backup and Replication can offload the data straight to object storage, of course, so can the agents. So be it agent for Windows or for Linux, they both can offload the data straight to object storage. And we also have this modern authentication support for our agents as well. It's also supported for Veeam Backup and Replication, of course. And our Veeam agent for Linux, starting with the latest version, will also support, as you can see, these GFS backups, so the yearlies, monthlies, and so on. And I think one of my favorite features is this VDI plugin for Microsoft SQL Management Studio. We had this ongoing fight between backup admins and SQL admins over who should own the database backup. Finally, we can just deploy it through Microsoft SQL, and the DBA will have access to set up the schedule and monitor the backups, and the backup admin will just see the Veeam backups landing in the repository, and they'll both be able to restore, of course, the DBA only to the local machine, to the VDI, or the Veeam admin to any other host from the infrastructure, and so on. And lastly, we also have a button in the ribbon. So it's just that we have to click it and it will start some checks. Right now we have 12 checks that are done by default. So we'll check, for example, if you have immutable backups, if you have remote registry enabled, and some security and infrastructure checks. And you'll basically have this best practices checked for you, and then of course you can take actions to maybe try to follow some more best practices towards the backup environment. And now for Veeam backup for Microsoft in V7. So as you can see, first off, we brought these immutable backup copies. So the first stage of backups won't be immutable, just as they are not today. However, we can make these backup copies, and we can also offload the data to the archive tier, be it in Azure, for example. And these backup copies, again, since they are immutable, they cannot be edited, removed, and so on. The same license, which is used for Veeam Backup for Microsoft, so you don't have to worry about any additional license, because with V7 you can monitor it with Veeam 1 as well. And it means that you can have not only real-time alerts, but you can also pull reports. Maybe you want to receive a report daily at 8 a.m. to see how the backups fared, and if you have any problems with your proxies and so on, you can do that. And our self-service restore portal has some improvements, like as you can see, support for Teams, as Teams has the new API, and you can also set up, you can also choose your restore point in the latest product version. And here we can see the infrastructure for Veeam Backup for Microsoft. So this is what we had until now. As I said, we can do immutable backup copies, starting with V7. And since you can also add Veeam1, you just have to add the machine with Veeam Backup for Microsoft through the IPv4 address. And you'll have not only dashboards, but you can also pull these reports, alerts, and it means that this tool is also great for compliance or audit reasons, for example. Plus, you'll notice also some tendencies across your backup infrastructure. And Gabi, if you want to take over.
Yes, thank you, Mircea. Thank you, everyone. So nice to virtually meet everyone. Just a few words about myself. I'm part of the account management team here at Veeam. So I'm acting as the main support resource for Pugh. For any further discussions involving Veeam, feel free to reach out to the Pugh team, and then I'll definitely coordinate with them to offer you the best possible support. I'll just take a minute on this slide. Just wanted to let everyone know on the recent Veeam name changes in terms of products. As you may have probably noticed, or you have not yet, Veeam has actually gone to market with a new marketing strategy, and we're now calling the whole set of products the Veeam Data Platform, which is split in 3 versions. I'll just be brief. So instead of having, probably everyone here knows the former Veeam backup and replications, which served as the main backup and recovery product we only used to have back in the days when Veeam just started. That one is going to now be called Veeam Data Platform Foundation Edition. So whenever you hear Foundation Edition, just keep in mind that's the old or the former Veeam backup and replication, which is only offers, as I mentioned, backup and recovery. The second edition will be Advanced Edition, which is the former Veeam Availability Suite. For those of you who don't know, that's a bundled offer which covers the backup part of it, which is Veeam Backup and Replication, plus the monitoring tool for your infrastructure and estate, which is called Veeam One. Apart from, well, recovery, that contains alerts, monitoring, as mentioned on the slide. And then as a final product, which we name it as the full set product of Veeam, let's say the complete full package, we have the premium edition. We bundled the Veeam backup and replication, Veeam One, and the Veeam disaster recovery orchestrator, which you probably know it as, or now it's actually called Veeam recovery orchestrator. We're just trying to make the name simple for everyone to actually remember them and search them. And as mentioned, well, this one is like Foundation Edition plus Advanced Edition. And on top of those two, it's the Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, as we like to call it, a single platform to protect your entire hybrid cloud. Doesn't matter if it's residing on premises, in the cloud, it can be wherever. So that's it from me. Just wanted to make you aware of it in case you'll see some weird names, just for you to know where do they come from, and just for you to know why actually, what's the reason the old names disappeared. The products didn't disappear. It's just a rebranding strategy we're actually working on at the moment.